Hello everyone, I'm Minister Marvin Fant, and we're going to be discussing Pastor Jamal Bryant, who has made some controversial statements within the past few days. Now, Pastor Jamal Bryant is the pastor of New Birth Church in Atlanta, Georgia, whose former pastor is the late Eddie Long. And I have 7 points of contention or concern on Pastor Bryant. And like I said, I'm going to jump right into this.
I have since become more spiritual than religious.
Yes.
For people like me, and my mom feels like I was very, when I was thinking about this interview, I wanted to be very respectful of where you stand and then where I stand. But I always, for people who have grown up Christian, who have now taken more of the spiritual life, because I'm more kind than I am in church on Sunday.
Yes.
What do you say to me?
I would say to you, this is the largest demographic of Africans living in America who don't go to church. And it is testament not to you, but the failure of the evolving of the church. But I'll give you one example. Black Lives Matter is a stumbling block for the church because it is the very first civil rights movement in the history of America that, one, did not come out of the church, and two, is not led by a religious figure. And what my grandmother would put it this way, your slip is showing, is that the black church has exposed that they don't know how to support what they don't lead. And so what the church has to do is really repackage itself, is that the black church is almost in Leave It to Beaver. So we see family as a husband and a wife and 2 kids, and marginalized single parents. 98% of black churches have a youth ministry, but have nothing for kids with special needs. The largest demographic in our community, for the very first time, they're more seniors than teenagers. So, Rashawn, it's hard to believe there are more nursing homes than there are middle schools. So most black churches have a youth pastor but don't have a seniors pastor. Or let's go to other side of the spectrum. The black church will ask for your tithe, want your 10%, but never show you how to multiply your 90. So there's nothing about financial literacy. There's nothing about economic development. We just curate welfare worship, that if you shout, you're gonna be debt free. If you yell, then you're gonna be a millionaire. But nothing about delayed gratification, nothing about sweat equity. I opened up in our church that 92% of my congregation doesn't have an investment portfolio. So I had to bring in stockbrokers to show them how to do it. The Bible says we die from a lack of knowledge. So the stuff that was applicable for your grandmother means nothing to you. And so I said, I had a Zoom with all of my singles just this week, is that for me to tell 16-year-olds to be celibate is one thing. A 37-year-old who's used to getting some, I need a different kind of gospel.
Yeah.
So the church ain't telling me nothing about sex toys. They ain't saying nothing about the church telling me to be celibate, but my gynecologist saying something got to happen down there because your stuff's shutting down.
Yeah.
So we got to have real gospel for grown-ups.
I'm about to go to New Birth. I'm going to New Birth on Sunday.
No. So the church is not relatable to our generation and down. So imagine when I was growing up, they were telling you don't have your phone on in church. I'm telling y'all, turn your phone on, take a selfie, use hashtag New Birth Now, so that we can move forward. Society, Rashawn, changes every 4 years, but church culture changes every 4 years, but church culture changes every 20. So the average church is 15 years behind schedule. So those of you who watching, your church is so proud to be on Facebook, but all the youth are on TikTok.
They are.
They stopped being on Facebook when their mother tried to friend them. So you got to figure out, how am I relevant and how do I repackage? So I understand you are spiritual is what you want to call it, because we don't have a terminology of how do I love God when I hate the church. And can I love him without hating the politics of church? And so churches blew up in the pandemic, and they're not doing their due diligence. Why? They grew up because we went virtual. So now I can go to church and I ain't got to worry about being judged by what I got on.
Right.
Now I can go to church and you ain't going to judge me because of my tattoos, because of my piercings, or because I have a same-sex lover.
Yes.
So you got to ask yourself, why is the church not saying nothing about Brittany Garner?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They stuck in the same place.
Because she's black and she's gay.
Okay. And what I said, I was in South Carolina 2 days ago. I said, I don't want to hear that argument. You can't support Black Lives Matter because they were pushed by the LGBT community. Then why did you support the March on Washington? March on Washington was not Dr. King's march. He was a speaker. The organizer was a black man. And y'all got on all these buses from all these Baptist churches and supported it. Let's do the exact same thing. And so I think that the black church has got to have a real come to Jesus meeting and get into the 21st century. I got up, Rashawn, after the Supreme Court ruling about that new birth and me are pro-choice because Jesus is.
Right.
He said, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you decide to let me in, that's pro-choice. God in the Garden of Eden said to Adam and Eve, all of these trees are available to you. I want you to pick those. I'm not putting this other tree behind barbed wire and the ADT alarm. Don't eat it, but that's your choice.
Yes.
Christianity in and to itself is pro-choice. But we don't say anything because a lot of black churches are white evangelicals in drag. And they don't know who it is that they are because their politics are thrown off and don't really speak to, you okay?
I'm good, I'm fine.
Don't really speak to what's happening in the culture.
So, how are you leading in this effort to try to change the narrative? Or are you just saying, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do and help the people that are in my congregation? How are you making sure that more people think like this, or at least have this type of conversation so that they can try to change their thought process?
Yeah, because I'm mindful that I'm not after Christians. I'm after people who don't go to church. And a lot of churches are just recycling people from other churches. That's not who I'm after. I'm looking for people that smell like weed. I'm at a place, Rashawn. New Birth is the largest land-owning black church in America.
Wow.
And so my position to my deacons is, why aren't we not raising cannabis? I'll be able to bring in black males. They're able to do it legally. I'm teaching them farming.
Oh my God.
I'm helping them to enhance the ecosystem. This is the kind of conversation. So if the guy, black boy in Bankhead said, they growing weed at the church, where do I join?
Yes.
I don't need no pamphlet for him. Yeah.
Right.
He coming in. And that's the group that I'm going after.
Now, Pastor Bryant said that the church sees the family like it's Leave It to Beaver and marginalizes single parents. First of all, when he says like Leave It to Beaver, he was referencing husband and wife in the home versus basically saying single parents, talking about just the mother, the female. I beg to differ with him on that, because the way I've been seeing it, the way I've seen it is the church does not marginalize the single parent, the mother, so to speak. As a matter of fact, she's been put up on a pedestal, really, and it goes in line with the way women out here are now, where they take pride in being a single parent. You know, they're saying, well, I don't need a man and I can do this by myself. No, you can't. You can't do this by yourself. Because the Bible and God states that it's supposed to be a man and a woman. The Bible also states that it's supposed to be the man. Oh, big surprise here. It's supposed to be the man who raises the children. But that's got flipped around, and that story is for another situation, another opportunity. Now, point number 2, which I agree with him on this, so maybe I shouldn't have it as a point of contention, but anyway, it's a point. And he said that the church needs to, instead of talking about tithes and offerings, it should also be teaching on finances, teaching on setting financial goals and things of that nature. I totally agree with him on that. I really do. I totally agree. Because you're not getting this in schools. You're not. You're not getting this in schools. And these churches out here, you need to get with people who are financially literate, know what they're doing, teaching about stocks, teaching about bonds, teaching about the benefits of insurance, because there are plenty of benefits geared toward insurance also. A lot of you may not even know this. But yes, there should be training on finances, because the Bible speaks of us being good stewards of our money. Point number 3, now he said that the churches went quiet on Brittany Griner, the WNBA star who was imprisoned in Russia for about 10 months back, or starting back in February, because she was arrested for having a vial of cannabis oil on her possessions. Now, me and my wife discussed this. Really, as much as she's traveled overseas, and with some of the restrictions that a lot of these countries have, opposite of the United States, that was a risk on her part. Really, she should have been more aware of that. And it was, to me, I take it as being arrogant. Well, you just figure you just, go anywhere and take anything you want. But I bet the next time, if she goes, and me personally, I would not even venture back out. Not venture back out of the United States for a long time. But if she were to go out again, be smart about it. Really, be smart about it. But now he brought up Brittany Griner, and it was a jab at the church, because the church has not embraced the gay community. And I skip past the alphabet sayings of it. I'll just say the gay community. And he took a jab at the church. And see, with him on that, I'm getting a vibe that in order to bring others in, he's compromising. Just reading between his lines, he's compromising. And I myself, the gay situation never came up. Me and my wife, we were always talking about how ignorant it was for her to have that marijuana on her. So in that situation, it really wasn't even an aspect of her being gay, but yet he wanted to throw that in there. And a cousin of mine, we had this discussion also, and she was saying, there's something not right about what he's talking about here. He's got some sort of agenda, and yeah, he's got an agenda. All right, point number 4 is when he made a comparison of the church should be supporting Black Lives Matter versus the Civil Rights Movement. But I didn't see the comparison. I did not see the comparison. Because now, looking back at the video, he said that, first of all, the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm not on board with the organization, for one thing. Now, the organization is run by the gay community. I'm not down with that. I'm down with the concept of the words Black Lives Matter because it's in relation to police brutality. That some people get that twisted. And I'm talking about those of the white community who fail to see the significance of that. But like I said, I'm not down with the organization itself. I'm just down by the wording of it. Now, his comparison was that, well, with the March on Washington, that wasn't organized by Dr. Martin Luther King. It was organized by somebody else. He said, but yet churches got behind that. What in the world does that have to do with what you brought up about the Black Lives Matter? It has nothing to do. Nothing to do. That was a thinly veiled comparison. Very thin. Insignificant. Is that the best you could bring up in comparison to try to make your point? That was weak. Weak, Pastor Bryant. Very weak. Okay, point number 5. And this point is really the crux of why I'm doing this video. And yes, and I got it at number 5 of 7. But this is really the crux of it, because the idea that he wants to bring in black males, and I'm using my own term here by waving a joint and for them to smell it, because he says he wants those who smell like weed. He's trying to pull them in. But just wave a joint and he'll come running. I would take offense to that. Matter of fact, I do take offense to that since I'm a man. Now, I'm not in that demographic of age, but still, I'll take offense to that. Because it's saying that, well, the majority of black men, they smoke weed, and this is what'll bring them in. Not the gospel, okay, but weed, that'll bring them in. And then he said we're gonna grow a marijuana farm. But really? Because that's hard to do in the state of Georgia. Georgia has one of the most hardest and restrictive laws concerning marijuana in the U.S. And Mr. Bryant, you live in Georgia. You have your church in Georgia. So how are you going to pull this off? Tell us, how are you going to pull this off without it being illegal? Because even with the cannabis oil for medicinal purposes only, okay, it's still a very restrictive thing to get out there in the state of Georgia. So how are you going to pull this off? How? Well, I guess that remains to be seen, right? But like I said, I just totally disagree with him on this. Now, some of you may agree, but to me, I disagree. Because you're compromising the principles of the Lord. You're compromising the ways. I understand you want to, in your mind, in your opinion, to bring others in a more unconventional way. You know what? I can get down with that. I'm not against that. Think outside the box. I'm all for that. Okay? Think outside the box. That's good. Because I'm really not in the old school way of doing things, but I am all about doing things, thinking outside of the box, but not compromising the Word of God. That's what I'm about on this. And to say that you want to, pull in young men using marijuana. And then, okay, here's the thing. You pull them in. When are you going to talk about the Word of God? See, their thing is they'll be coming in just to get the marijuana. Just to get the marijuana. I don't think you really thought that through, did you? Point number 6. Now, he spoke about pro-choice. Kind of like, glanced in there real quick on that one. Again, I look at it this way. When he said pro-choice and the way he used that, that was very ingenious of you. I mean, because yes, when it comes to the Lord, he gives us a choice in all things, okay? So I like how you twisted things around to suit what you were talking about. But yes, the Lord, he allows us to have choices on everything, okay? It's our choice to do this. It's our choice to do that. So, but then when he tries to make it sound like, well, the Lord is pro-choice, again, you're twisting things around. Now, the way me personally, I look at it, because he was talking about abortion. Now, I'm against abortion. So is my wife. But there are mitigating gray areas when it comes to abortion, and I mentioned about when there is rape and the female becomes pregnant, when there is certain circumstances, and the circumstances are kind of minimal, but still, I say allow that to be up to the female, between her and God. And I would only have it in those situations where there is a forced situation, there is a rape, maybe because of a medical situation. But only for those situations do I would say you leave it up to that individual. And lastly, now he talked about the church it should be repackaged. I agree. You see, good. Again, I'm okay with that. Find new ways to bring people in. Come up with fresh ideas to speak to the people. But again, never compromise with what the Word says. Never compromise with what God says. Don't compromise. And a lot of the stances that he's taking, he's compromising. And that's wrong. Enough said.